in order to keep the pressure off of Cousins in any week, really. And so I think that's going to be a challenge for them going into this game. Defensively, it's just so tough. They've got so many weapons. And you start with Tom Brady, of course, who's having, by him, an okay season. Not fantastic. He's not 120 on the passer rating like he usually is or whatever. He's in the 90s, and he's 19 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 16th in passer rating in the NFL. But still, at home, he's just so tough, and they've got a lot of weapons. When Sony Michel's in the game,
he's a nice back.
Yeah, he's a good back.
And James White, it's interesting, until the last couple of weeks, James White was probably one of the more valuable backs in the entire league. Now, I think teams have adjusted to that a little bit, and right. Sony Michel has become a bigger factor, and White isn't as big a factor, but they have two great options there.
Yeah, exactly. And you think about Michel, and I watched him a lot in college at Georgia, Sony Michel and Nick Chubb at Georgia.
I know, it's amazing how many good backs.
Nick Chubb's a pretty good player at Cleveland. And
yep.
That's quite a pair in the backfield. And so I think Michel makes a difference. He missed 3 games. Obviously, Gronk makes a huge difference in that offense, and he missed 3 games.
He has not had a great year, but he had a big touchdown catch last weekend.
Right, exactly. So you look at a couple weeks ago, everybody got, the Titans beat the Patriots 34-10, and wow, the Patriots are sinking. Well, no Gronkowski that game.
Yep.
They were missing their 2 starting offensive tackles that game, and
I think they were missing Michel that game.
And that's right, and missing Michel that game. So you take those guys out of the mix, and all of a sudden, and the Patriots are on the road, so a different animal there. So
seems like the Patriots always have one stinker per year.
Exactly.
You remember that game against Kansas City?
A couple of years ago.
The one that led to Bill Belichick saying on to Cincinnati.
Yeah.
People were asking if Tom Brady should be benched and all that. No, they just sometimes they have a bad game like everybody else.
That's right. And so I think the things the Vikings have to be really wary of this week, the turnover battle. New England's +5. You go into Foxborough. Forecast is for rain on Sunday. It's not going to be real cold. They'll be in the 50s, so that'll be a good thing for the Vikings, who are more of an indoor type team and warm weather type team. But they have won twice on the East Coast this year, which is a positive and perhaps a good omen. They've won in Philadelphia. They've won at the Jets, but that's not winning in New England now.
Right.
And so, but I think they can take some confidence out of last week, take some confidence from having won a couple games out East this year, and go into this game and give them their best shot. And I think that, as we said, if they can have a little bit of success running the ball, and I think the Cousins and Thielen and Diggs can do a lot of damage against that Patriots secondary if he has time to throw. And so that, I think, will be the big challenge. And hanging on to the football for Cousins, for Dalvin Cook. The Patriots should be trying to strip him. And you know that Belichick's saying, hey, Cook's put the ball on the ground a couple times this year, and let's try to get it out. And Cousins has put the ball on the ground 6 times this year. And so those are the things that they're going to be very concerned about. I'm sure that Zimmer's talking to them about it, as are the offensive coaches. And that's going to be a key thing. But conversely, the Vikings defensively need to try to force some turnovers. It's just really hard when you're playing Brady like a breeze. The ball is out so quick, and they've got to beat the defensive linemen. Got to beat their guys so fast, and and if you try to blitz him, he's going to read the blitz. He's going to find the hot receiver, the checkdowns, and that's where James White becomes a big factor, and Michel out of the backfield, and Gronk on the quick routes, and so there's a lot of factors going on. Gordon has added another dimension to their offense. However long he can last in the league again, we'll see. But we know that he's obviously potentially a very good receiver, and so I think there are a lot of subplots in this game. But ultimately, it's going to come down to, can they pressure Brady enough to make an impact and slow him down offensively? I think that's the key to the ball game to me, and make enough plays, obviously, on the offensive side. And then Dan Bailey can't miss kicks, because he's going on the other side. Gostkowski is one of the best in the league. He is used to kicking in that stadium, Gillette Stadium, with the winds and the cold, and not so cold this week, but rain potentially. And so Bailey's got to be a little bit better than he was last week.
We've touched on the Vikings and the division and their opponent. Let's go to the league. What do you think of the Reuben Foster scenario where the 49ers draft him and keep him despite his off-the-field problems, as we say euphemistically? Then they finally cut him after a domestic violence allegation, and the Washington Redskins are the only team that claim him.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to touch him. And to me, it's unfortunate that they did claim him. I agree. I think this guy needs to learn a lesson on his behavior and perhaps not even be in the league at all for an extended period of time until he gets the help he needs, the counseling he needs, and because he just obviously doesn't get it and continuously messing up and getting into trouble. And as I've always said, to me, I've got a no tolerance policy on domestic violence, and so I don't think this guy belongs in the league. I don't think Joe Mixon belongs in the league. There are a lot of guys I don't think belong in the league, but they're there because that's life in sports, and in the world as a whole, when you've got some talent, you're going to get an opportunity again. But yeah, that was kind of disgusting to me that the Redskins claimed him, and
disgusting, but probably not surprising given the way the Redskins have been run.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just not surprising, and so we'll see how it all shakes out. But I thought that was bad, but I think there are a lot of positive things going on around the league, and I think it's shaping up as a great last 5-week stretch run to the playoffs. And I wrote today on my sportingnews.com story about Dak Prescott and the challenges that he has and the pressure he's under with the Cowboys. And 3 weeks ago, they basically left the Cowboys for dead. They were 3-5. They lost a home Monday night game to the Titans. And what did they do? They go on the road. They beat Philadelphia. They beat Atlanta. Then they have the big Thanksgiving Day win over Washington. And I was really impressed with Prescott in that game because the Redskins were coming after him. They've got a good defensive line. They've got put a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and he was making some great throws. And, of course, thank you, John Gruden, for the Oakland fire sale and sending Amari Cooper to Dallas for a first-round pick. What a great addition he is to the Cowboys, and just what the doctor ordered for Dak Prescott because he was missing a true number one guy. Now he's got it, and obviously Amari Cooper, a 40-yard touchdown, a 90-yard touchdown in that game, and making a big difference there. But what I was talking about with Prescott is here's a guy, he's going into his final year of his contract next year. He's still on his rookie deal, and what's interesting to me, Jim, is that Jerry Jones has already said he's going to get extended, and he said that when they were 3-5. Now they're 6-5, and the price of poker is rising for Jerry and Stephen Jones. And so here's a guy that if he can get the Cowboys into the playoffs, win the division, and make a decent enough showing in the playoffs, as he really did in his rookie year against the Packers. He had a good game when they lost 34-31 to Aaron Rodgers that night. And so this guy, you talk about a pot of gold, it's sitting there for him, and the more he wins, the more the price is going to go up. And I said, I'm sure the contract that they're going to be looking at is Garoppolo's deal at $27.5 million a year with San Francisco when he'd only started 7 games.
Right.
And Dak Prescott, a very surprising stat, he's got the third most wins in the NFL as a starting quarterback in regular season over the last 3 years, which I don't think people would ever figure that's the case. It's Brady's got 32 wins, Roethlisberger has 29, and then it's Breeze and Prescott that are tied with 28.
That's amazing.
So it's an interesting stat, and yeah, he was ranked 21st in passer rating. Yeah, they've got a great running game with Zeke Elliott and all that. But if the ultimate goal is to win as a starting quarterback, hard to argue with that number, that stat. But he needs to finish the season strong, so he's got a lot at stake going out. And you continue with the quarterback conversation. Phillip Rivers, what a crazy, astounding game that was.
Wow. And isn't it fascinating that, I mean, you think back what the San Diego Chargers did. There was a time when they probably had the best roster in the NFL. And they had Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, and LaDainian Tomlinson all on the same team.
Yeah, right.
And Junior Seau, I think.
Yeah, exactly right. And so Rivers goes 28 for 29, and 3 touchdown passes, sets an NFL record, and the Chargers are 8-3, and pretty surprising. Now, we know they've had a good roster, and a lot of people thought they could be a playoff team, but still to be sitting at 8-3 is impressive. They're only a game behind the Chiefs, and I think they have one more shot at them this year. So we'll see how that shakes out. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of good stories around the league, a lot of interesting things happening as we come down the stretch, and Andrew Luck doing some fantastic things in Indianapolis. And
boy, what a difference. I mean, it's sometimes easy to overrate the quarterback position because the quarterback is dependent on so many other factors, but it's been just so black and white with that franchise. When he's healthy, they're a good team. When he's not healthy, they're not.
Yeah, exactly. And their offensive line has done great this year.
I mean, he barely gets touched anymore.
Yeah, 11 sacks and 5 straight games. They had no sacks. They had 1 last week. And so I'll give credit to Chris Ballard, their GM, for doing the smart thing and building up that offensive line because he knew the franchise quarterback that they had, they've invested in, and have to keep him healthy, which he hasn't been the last several years. So what a great story he is. What a great story J.J. Watt is in terms of comeback player of the year. I'll give it to Luck over Watt right now, but it's close.
Yeah.
And J.J.'s got 11.5 sacks, and I didn't see that coming either.
No, I mean, it's a position that demands such pure explosiveness. I just didn't trust anybody to come back from that kind of a surgery with that kind of oomph, I guess.
That's right. And so I think that, as I said, a lot of interesting stuff. The Seattle win over Carolina was huge for Seattle, and it was kind of a mixed blessing, I thought, for the Vikings. On the one hand, it moved them ahead of Carolina into the number 1 wild card spot at 6-4-1 versus 6-5, but it also brought Seattle back into the mix at 6-5, and they got to play them next week in Seattle, very tough place to play, and Russell Wilson is hot. And so, again, you get that murderer's row of quarterbacks, 3 in a row, Rodgers, Brady, Wilson. Wow, tough.
Absolutely. And I'm looking forward to talking about the Seahawks next week because I think that's a fascinating franchise. They're basically rebuilding on the fly, from a team that basically should have won 2 straight Super Bowls. And Pete Carroll. I think we should talk a lot about Pete Carroll next week as well. Let's go to our prediction. What are you thinking this week?
I'm thinking that the Vikings will play them tough, but not quite get there. And I'm calling it 27-24 New England. As I said, I think it's going to be a good football game, fun game to watch. Throw maybe a little weather into it is always kind of interesting. And I worry about the turnovers. I worry about the kicking game. And I think the Vikings will make plays offensively. I think they'll be okay defensively, but ultimately I think they'll come up a little short. So I'm gonna say New England by a field goal.
I'm going to go New England 26-20. I just think that it's funny, if you break down the teams, you can give the Vikings a lot of advantages, but just playing there in those conditions against Brady when the Patriots are kind of getting it together for the stretch run, I just don't think it makes any sense to pick the Vikings, even though you might think they're the superior team in some ways.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people may look at the standings and say, oh, the Patriots are 8-3 and they have a 3-game lead in their division. They don't think about the division because they know they're going to win it. It'll be the 10th straight year winning the division. They're looking at Kansas City and that number 1 seed, and they're 1 game behind Kansas City, and they beat them head-to-head in Week 6. So the Patriots are looking at, we want to win out and catch the Chiefs because we want postseason games in Foxborough. And as you said, it's hard to pick against New England at home. I just can't. I can't go against them at home.
Last topic. It's a fun one and it's a difficult one. Who would you take, Brady or Rodgers? Not today, career-wise.
Career-wise, I'm gonna have to stick with Tom Brady.
Yeah.
I think that 5 Super Bowls, even though obviously he's had great talent around him and great coaching and all that, but there's just something special about him in postseason, crunch time, going back to the tuck game against the Raiders way back when, and all through his career, the guy just gets it done. And I think to me, he's a little better leader than Aaron Rodgers. I think there's a little more respect from his teammates of his leadership ability. And not that Rodgers is not a leader. I think he is a leader. But I just think that Aaron Rodgers strikes me more as a me guy than Tom Brady is when he's in that locker room. And so I think And again, you look at 5 Super Bowls.